Well, it could be said that the leadership crisis Britain finds itself in right now is its own doing. The main bone of contention among investors and opposition party leaders was Liz Truss and ex-Finance Minister Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget, which saw the pound plunging at one point to a record low against the dollar, and the Bank of England intervening in an emergency to wrest the volatility in the bond market. Chris Gilmour is an independent analyst, and he joins us now from neighboring Scotland to talk more about what to expect going forward. Chris, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We saw the pound and markets reacting positively to the resignation of Liz Truss yesterday. Is the uncertainty over the leadership race the main reason we are seeing the slump today in the pound sterling?
Yes, I think it is. And I think it relates directly to the possibility that Boris Johnson may be reinstated as the UK's Prime Minister. As things stand, it looks like he's in the lead as far as the number of votes garnered by in terms of the parliamentary party are concerned. And I think, you know, he left for very good reasons. He left in disgrace back in July. And ironically, you know, it was, I can't remember the exact number of Conservative MPs that resigned and demanded that he go. But now they're all saying, no, we want him back. So, you know, it really is. It's a pathetic, shambolic situation.
It is a shambolic one.
To answer your question, I think that's why the markets are taking such a dim view of things.
Even just a couple of hours ago, we are seeing that Britain's Defence Minister Ben Wallace said that he's not going to actually stand because he believes in Boris Johnson. What do you make, as an investor yourself and an analyst, what do you make of Boris Johnson's possible comeback? Would it be such a terrible idea?
Yes, I think it would be an appalling idea. The man is a liar and a cheat. I mean, there's no two ways about it, and that's been proven. It's not. I'm not defaming him. But this is fact. So, you know, he's very malleable. In his position as Prime Minister, he pretty much does what powerful forces want him to do, and I think that's why the European Research Group, for example, would love to have him back. The people who were instrumental in doing Brexit. The far right, if you like. And the Conservative Party in Britain has been lurching very much to the right in recent years. And I think they would love to have him back because he's a very lazy guy. He's very bright, very intelligent, but he's also incredibly lazy. And I think he would pretty much do exactly what they told him to do and to just let them get on with it. And so I think they're concerned, they're worried now, because people like Truss, who was very much on their side, very much a libertarian, and as was Kwasi Kwarteng, they're gone. So, and they've been replaced by much more orthodox people like Jeremy Hunt, for example. And I think these people are starting to feel marginalized. That's why they want to have Johnson back, almost at any cost. And I think, look, to be fair, they also know that Johnson does have a lot of public support, even among, how can I put it, among Labour voters. He's got this kind of boyish charm about him. And it's only when you scratch the surface and see that there's absolutely no substance to the man at all, that you realize that he's a complete charlatan.
It's really a strange one because the last 6-7 years have been quite eventful for Britain since Brexit. And you mentioned that if Britain could go back to Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister, it does suggest, as many people have said, that Brexit itself could have been a mistake.
Brexit has been a massive mistake, and you see it every time you go shopping. I mean, you touched on it in the intro there. The inflation is now 10.1%, having been 9.9 in August. The Bank of England reckons it's going to peak at anywhere between 15 and 18%. Now, that's huge, much, much higher than it is in the US. And obviously, the weak pound has got a lot to do with that. But a lot of it is also to do with Brexit. Goods in the shops, you have to source them from many other parts of the world, when formerly you got them from literally across the channel. So it's much more difficult. There's a lot more bureaucracy involved. It's a difficult thing. Frankly, it's one of the stupidest things the British electorate ever did in 2016, voting to leave the European Union. Look, the European Union is a highly bureaucratic mess itself, but you reform institutions like that from within. You don't reform them by leaving. So no, I think easily on balance, Britain made a disastrous mistake by leaving that.
Clearly, judging by what has happened in the past 6 weeks, it seems investors voted with their wallets against the mini-budget and the tax cuts by Truss and Kwarteng. When you look at how the markets reacted, is this a big lesson for other developed and emerging markets like South Africa to never discount the markets in whatever plan you embark on, no matter the political power any leader might have?
No, absolutely. And if you go a little bit further into what actually happened on September the 23rd with the mini-budget and why the Bank of England had to step in, it was really because the pension funds, the UK pension funds, had a lot of what are called contracts for difference, derivatives on a lot of their underlying investments that were going against them because the pound was falling. And it was becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they had to... They were having to sell things, literally, just to keep their heads above water. And so the British pension fund industry has got itself basically at the mercy of the bond markets, the global bond markets, and the global derivatives markets. And to answer your question, yes, absolutely. Any country in the world these days pretty much has to take cognizance of what is going on in these markets and act accordingly. And Kwasi Kwarteng acted as if Britain was the United States, which it clearly isn't. It has its own currency, yes, but it doesn't have the world's monetary standard in the US dollar. And the pound took massive strain, as you know, and it still is. And I think it's probably going to take more strain. And Britain's been through these sterling crises for many decades, and this is the latest in a long and unhappy line of them.
Yeah, Britain is not the empire it used to be, although many still feel and act as if it still has that sway. But how did the UK get to a point where it has a 1.2 trillion rand hole that is now needed to be plugged with borrowing, because the plan by Truss included a lot of borrowing going forward?
Yeah, I think one of the main reasons for that is COVID. During the COVID pandemic, when Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor, they threw an awful lot of money at the pandemic, and that was the right thing to do, to keep the economy going. And Sunak did warn everyone that it had to be paid for somehow. And I think had he won the race to be the Prime Minister, I think he would have ensured that Britain went on to some sort of austerity drive right now. And this 1.2 trillion rand hole, it's largely come about as a result of putting so much money into the UK economy in terms of the furlough schemes and stuff like that, to keep the economy going. And it was very successful. But, it lasted for far too long, and it now has to be paid for. And when you've got something like that, you can't come along and do what Truss and Kwarteng thought they were going to do, and just have more and more unfunded spending to try and get yourself out of a hole that was already huge.
Chris Gilmour is an independent investment analyst. Thank you very much for your time joining us from Scotland as he watches quite closely what is actually taking place across that particular border in England as we await who is going to be the new Prime Minister, with many expecting Boris Johnson to return merely at least 7 weeks after his unceremonious departure. Thank you very much, Chris, for your time.